it's really helpful to understand how LLMs actually work. It's essentially a tool that translates at vast speeds a lot of data into that can be topics, it can be user data or user preferences that they're seeing through traffic data, pulls all of this in, all of this content that you have on your site, and translates it into vector data. And what vector data is, it's a list of essentially coordinates. So let's say you have a site that's trying to sell shoes. Google will try, or not Google, but LLM tools will try and understand that site by mapping the topic of shoes to a coordinate on a map. And around it, it has a bunch of other topics that are also mapped out into coordinates. And when we pull those together, we can create a contextual understanding of the various topics that are on your site. It references that data extremely quickly and then uses that to try and understand the topic on a more contextual basis based on the relationship between various topics, not just the topic itself. So a way to picture this as it might play out visually is, again, if we go back to shoes as an example, at the center of this map of data is the concept of shoes, or the topic of shoes. And then this is actually a visualized vector embedding map for what topics would an LLM see as related to the topic of shoes, and how closely related are they. And it uses that to try and understand your topic in context. So it will say, hey, I see the word shoes in content, and then it will use all of these adjacent terms and concepts to try and understand what you're trying to communicate and understand the topic of shoes contextually. It can't literally or visually interpret what a shoe is, so it has to come through numbers and data and mapping. And you can see here with the green, blue, and orange lines here, this is a three-dimensional map. And so it creates a literal map of how these topics all map to one another and how they all relate to one another to try and understand within context what you're communicating through your site. And so it's about covering topics. It's about having content on a number of topics that can be found, that people are searching for, and just creating a volume of content that can be found for various adjacent topics. So this can be hard to understand at first. I encourage you, projector.tensorflow.org is a really interesting tool where you can start playing around with how topics are related in LLMs' minds and start seeing for yourself how some of your core topics might be tied to other topics. And it can be really surprising. Some of these, even if you look into some of these results on this example, are incredibly weird and don't necessarily make a ton of sense. But within contextual tools, it kind of starts to click as to why you might be found for these things. And this is just how any LLM tool is going to understand your data or your topics that you're covering on the site. So it's highly contextual, and it's how it gets seemingly human-like and complicated in its understanding of various topics as it's mapping them out to lots of other adjacent ideas. So how it can get so sophisticated in its answering and the prompts or responses it provides is through this understanding of your topics and content. This is why I say it's a data model. This is not an intelligence. It's just grouping these things based on context and the data available to it. So once you kind of understand how these vector embeddings work and how LLMs approach it, it becomes a lot clearer to see how you might interact with this and where the value might be as a marketer and how you can write to it, essentially, with the content you create. The first thing you can do is you can see what topics LLMs associate with your site. So you can actually, with a paid ChatGPT API key, and with a tool like Screaming Frog, you can pull that API key into Screaming Frog and actually get that coordinate map. And it will look about like this. You'll get the map of kind of, here's the XYZ coordinate of the topics covered on your site. So you can actually get a vector embed set. From there, you can run that through an open source visualizer and see how AI understands your content. I say that we can't really do much with this because it's a limited exercise. It's not actually showing us how you are being found. It's not showing you what users are searching for. It's more just showing you what you might be found for and how LLMs are understanding the topics currently covered on your site. That might be useful. It might be an enlightening thing to show you what you're not showing up for more than anything, and maybe show you where there are gaps in your content, or something that you would like to be found for and you're not being. This exercise can be really valuable. It will essentially break down a visualization map of here are the topics that we interpret as being present on your site. But depending on what tool you're using, open source visualizers do require a little bit of JavaScript to interact with. That said, you can find tutorials that will walk you through it step by step, so it's not too intimidating. But if you do want to do this, it is a process that you can actually run and try and get a sense for what you're being, or not what you're being found for, but what you might be found for. Like I said, visibility is limited, but if you just want to identify content gaps, there may be simpler ways to do this. SEMrush and SparkToro are great tools that we use a lot at Northwoods to try and surface where there might be opportunities or useful content that we could produce that may appeal to our audiences. So you can do this either through their AI tools in SEMrush. They're basically doing this exercise when you interact with this tool. They are breaking down your vector embeds and then using that to understand where the topics on your site are and what you're currently covering and where you might have a gap that your competitor is covering that you maybe aren't. I haven't seen anything that yields like, here is the exact prompt somebody typed in to find you. I would be very interested to see what that would look like, even how we would surface that data, just because prompts are so varied. But generally speaking, it's not out there yet. Even ChatGPT will say that they can't help you there if you ask for, can you help me find kind of what prompts my site was found for. So there's just no way that people have the right data. If somebody does say that they're surfacing that, they're probably guessing. They're probably reverse engineering and using AI to try and interpret based on your vector embeds what you might be found for.